Hi guys, it's Jacob from StringBuzz here, stringbuzzworld.org being the music journalism site, links are in the description down below. And we have a brand new song review for you today, and it's the latest track by Katy Perry featuring Nicki Minaj, and that's Swish Swish. So I'm going to refer to the original article as I usually do for these videos, so I hope you enjoy. Now, Katy Perry is 1 for 2 when it comes to this upcoming album which she's about to release. I really enjoyed the direction she went in for her track, Chained to the Rhythm, but I thought Bon Appetit was a complete dud and a waste of my time. This is yet another track Nicki has featured on this year, and although I have to admire her hard work because she's clearly grinding this year, she still hasn't really put out a track that has really broke out all too much. Much like her previous endeavors from years gone by, she hasn't really been at that level really, especially when it comes to chart performance. Shall we see what I thought of this brand new collaboration though? Well, it's fine, and there are like 3 30-second snippets in here which I thought were fairly decent, which I enjoyed perhaps, but the rest of the track I actually found fairly irritating. I like the deep house beat and how dark and almost rave-like it was, but everything else was just bland and forgettable with the exception of a solid performance and perhaps one of the best of her year by Nicki. I thought Nicki Minaj put in a great performance here, her best feature anyway. Katy's sections are dull and bland, and her natural tone of voice doesn't really suit this bad bitch persona which she's trying to rock at the moment, so it hence made a lot of the lines seem much cornier and cheesier than they perhaps should have. It just doesn't have much of a spine to it really, and it seems a little more whiny than it does empowering. If you really wanted to bash Taylor Swift, and that was what Katy was clearly trying to do here, then there are so many easier ways to do it and so many other things to target. When it comes to the production of this track, again, the house instrumentals are probably the best part for me. I like the pads during these sections, I like the synths as well, and I even like the straight drum track since it had this mighty meaty kick, but the vocals are really overproduced, and the sections in which we are sort of building without the beat are just boring as heck. All the instrumentals used in those sections were just dull and like your usual sort of presets. There isn't any cutting aspects in here since all the vocals are a little bit cloudy. The samples are as well, just to add that as on top. The synths are watery as well, and even the dark bass is a little bit too smooth. That meant that there's nothing really cut into the foreground, nothing really hit into the foreground, so I was left a little uninterested here. Sure, we have had much worse production cycles than this in pop music thus far this year, but I can't say that this is a good one in comparison. When it comes to the musicality of this track, I actually thought it was much more generic than a typical Katy Perry track, which is something which might sound a little bit weird on the surface, but hear me out, regardless of what you think of her, she writes hits, she writes mega hits, and her speciality is writing these big bad hooks over these big bad choruses that are a load of fun and get a whole crowd singing along. But this arrogant approach didn't work lyrically, and due to the syllabic nature of the lyrics and the terrible dramatization, it didn't really work melodically, hence meaning the harmonies were all out as well. In fact, the harmonies in here were almost non-existent. Her hooks are tired and boring, her notation in general is just really weak, and if you basically took Katy's name off of this track, I wouldn't even recognize her voice, and I don't think anyone would have cared about this track. Nicki does put in a good performance though, and I've often been critical of her this year, but when she holds herself back on this over-the-top pronunciation and stops with all the personas and all that sort of bullshit, then she has enough diction and rhythmic flow to really put together a really decent verse. There just isn't much here to analyze though for me. It's really basic and kind of bland overall. Lyrically, the digs are really weak and the subtlety isn't there either, so it's just a really rushed attempt at bashing someone else, and as I've said, the arrogant approach doesn't really suit Katy, and reinventing herself just like this sort of bad bitch, as I've already said, puts her into a category with all the other people who have tried to reinvent themselves as though there's in that type of persona, when she should really be a front runner. She shouldn't be just categorized like that. So all in all, it's not really worth your time, and it's not necessarily a bad track overall, just a really dull one and a disappointing one. So I gave it a G rating of 5 out of 10, which is a little bit higher than perhaps you may have thought from my comments in this video, but I think it is just an average track. But if you like this video, then please leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you around next time. Bye bye.